Welcome back to the workbench. Today I'm taking a look at this. The 1/72nd scale Hawker Typhoon Mark Ib from Airfix. Join me as I take a look inside the box and find out what's included. Hi, I'm Matt and you're watching Model Minutes. So today's video is a quick look inside the box of the 1/72nd scale Hawker Typhoon Ib from Airfix. And as you can see, this particular kit comes as a starter set. It's been a while since I've looked at a starter set, so this will be quite interesting. Now, the first thing that catches my eye on this one is the rather dramatic aerial assault of the Typhoon, which was well known for being a ground attack aircraft as well as a fighter. And you can see it here, they've got the motion blur here, it's attacking some armoured vehicles, it's firing its rockets, it's a very exciting scene. Over on this side of the box we've got a image of the paint scheme that's included, and you can see that there's only one. Starter sets don't very often tend to include more than one paint scheme. The reason being is because they include the paints. If there's two paint schemes, then you have to sort of decide which paint scheme are you going to do, which one do I provide the paints for. So Airfix have decided that they're going to provide the paints for one paint scheme, and as you can see I've got quite a lot of them, but we'll get into that in a minute. The edges of the box feature the same image as on the front, which helps you identify if it's on the shelf in such an orientation. The bottom of the box features multilingual safety information. And then the rear of the box, as is standard with the Airfix starter sets, contains the painting and decal placement instructions. So do not get rid of this at any point until you have completely finished your build. Down the bottom here we've got an indication that it's suitable for those aged 8 years and older. There are elements of this which are recyclable. We've got some more safety information and an address for Hornby. The paint scheme for this particular aircraft is a Hawker Typhoon of 266 Squadron based in Holland and Germany in April and May 1944. And what I quite like here is that they've given you an actual size image of the aircraft, so you could potentially make some masks for the paints if you really wanted to, but as a starter set you're probably not going to bother with that. One thing that is worth mentioning on here is on the top edge of the box we've got a flying hour, so make sure you cut that out and keep it. We've got the information about the actual Hawker Typhoon there, and it indicates that it's a skill level 1, so it should be one of the easier kits to build in the Airfix range. Up here at the top of the box we've got in a bubble blister 2 brushes of different thickness, normally it's a 4 and a 2. We've got 6 paints and a tube of Humbrol poly cement. So with what's included here, you should be able to achieve reasonably good results. I think this is technically classed as a medium starter set because it has got more than 4 paints and it has got 2 brushes, and the price reflects that as it retails for $13.99. The paints that should be included are these ones here: 30, 33, 56, 64, 78 and 106. And those will all be acrylic and up to the normal standard from Airfix, although I have been led to believe that since this was manufactured they've actually changed the design of their starter sets, and these no longer come in blisters but actually in sort of boxes which are glued onto the cardboard at the top here, so the paints have actually changed manufacturers since then. Let's get inside the box and see what's in there. As is normal for my unboxing videos, I'm going to take a look at the instructions first. And the instructions are to the very familiar format you get from Airfix. They are an A4 booklet. You get the multilingual information about the actual aircraft on the front. You get some information at the bottom, particularly saying, you know, wash the kit before you build it, because that will help the paint and glue stick to the surfaces. Turn over the page. We've got safety information in different languages, and then a key to the different symbols you are going to encounter during the build. Now this one keeps folding out, it keeps going. We've got more information here, safety instructions. And then eventually over here on the 3rd page we get into the assembly instructions. So let's take a look at these. So starting off at the top, we're adding parts of the seat, the control panel, we're adding it into the fuselage of the aircraft. None of these steps at the moment seem to be particularly busy. They are quite well broken down. There's only two or three things that you're doing at any one time. We add them into the aircraft here. Then we've got sort of internal cockpit, and these are potentially landing gear, wheel wells, elements of the air intake. That is then added to the fuselage. You can add your pilot in, so it's nice to have a pilot included. Sandwich the fuselage around all of that. You can add the engine exhausts, the tail surfaces, the lower parts of the wing, but it's worth noting here that if you want to use a display stand, you'll have to purchase that separately because Airfix no longer includes them as part of the set. But there are two holes here which you will need to drill out with a 2mm drill bit. And then here, this question mark says that this is an optional thing. You can either open up these 8 holes here for your rockets, or these 2 holes here on each side for the bombs. So you need to decide what bomb load or rocket load you're going to have, if any, and then open up those relevant holes. Turn over the page, and we are on to joining the top wing with the lower wing. And here you can see that there are gun bays, which is absolutely fantastic. You don't normally see these sort of added into kits at 1/72 scale, and if you did, you wouldn't expect to find it in a starter set. And here you are given the option of depicting the gun base open as if they're being rearmed. You will need to cut a piece of the wing out for that, so perhaps that is a little bit above a beginner's skill, but it shouldn't be too difficult to do providing you are careful. You can then fold those gun bay doors over and have the guns visible on the inside. Moving on down, landing gear. You can depict the landing gear raised or lowered, as is stated here. If you're going to have the weapons bay open, you will need the landing gear down because they can't rearm it during flight. Flip over the page. We've got the 2 options here now. So if you remember, I said that you need to open up the holes for the bombs or the rockets. So you can either install rockets or bombs, but not both. Step 17, you are adding the propeller to all its various parts. And this section here does not get glued. It merely holds everything together, and that allows you to rotate the propeller if you so wish. And then finally, that is pushed into its nose plug, and this tends to be a very familiar way that Airfix are designing their propellers at the moment. Before, you used to put the propeller in and then sandwich the fuselage, but now they've made this sort of special plug. So I've seen a few kits from Airfix which do that now, and it's actually a really good design piece in my opinion. And then here we're adding the cockpit canopy, and you can position it either open or closed, but it only comes in 2 parts by the looks of this. Sometimes you get one which is molded together, and then you get 2 separate parts, but I guess these just get pushed together and glued in place. So 18 stages. 18 stages for a beginner's set is a little bit rare. You don't normally get that many for a beginner set, but like I said, this is an intermediate beginner set. It's going to be a little bit harder than, say for example, the Spitfire or the BF-109E or the Mary Rose, for example, because those are very simple starter sets. They should be cheaper. They have less paints, they have less paintbrushes, they should have less steps, they've got less decals. But the intermediate ones should be a little bit harder, but you still get paints and things included. So 18 steps is reasonable. I guess you just have to take your time with it. Like I said, there were no painting instructions in there because the painting instructions are all on the back of the box. Let's take a look at the decals now. And as is quite common with starter sets, the decals tend to be fairly simple. So we've got up here, top corner, a control panel, which is nice to see. We've got various roundels for the wings, and then we've got the registrations for the fuselage. And just be aware, there is quite a lot of decal film there. If you're a particularly experienced modeler, you might want to cut that away so you can't see it, but provided you assemble the model fairly well and use a satin or gloss varnish, you shouldn't be able to see that. We've got the yellow stripes here, which I believe are for the leading edges of the wings. You could potentially paint that on yourself if you didn't want to use these, because applying decals to such an odd shape doesn't always go well, but I guess I'm probably going to do that and see how well it goes. These are walkway areas. We've got the tail, flash, and then I think that's the pendant for the person flying the aircraft. Not a very big sheet, but reasonably well detailed. I can't see any tears, rips, smudges, registry errors. I think they look quite good. Airfix do tend to make fairly good decals, so hopefully they'll apply to the model really well. Let's put the protective paper back on that, and then we will look at the plastic parts, the parts that you have all come to see. So contained in one plastic bag are all the parts, and clearly I need a new knife because this one's getting a bit blunt and can't even cut through a plastic bag. So let's get these out and take a look at them. As is normal from Airfix, you will get another plastic bag with the clear cockpit parts in, and that is purely to protect them so they don't supposedly get scratched. So let's get those out first and take a look at them. So as I said, you only get the front part and the rear part. They come in two separate parts, and you don't get one that's molded together. You've also got what looks to be a landing light there, perhaps. I didn't check in the instructions, but I believe that's what it is. The clear parts are crystal clear. There doesn't seem to be any scratches. There is a little tiny bit of flash in the odd place, but it's hardly noticeable. The moulded canopy lines are quite fine and thin, so just be aware of that when you come to paint them. But generally these parts look to be really well moulded. Let's take a look at the rest of the aircraft now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 4 sprues of main parts moulded in a blue-grey plastic, as is typical from Airfix. And again, like I said, you don't normally get that many from a beginner's set, but as it's intermediate, they're pushing your skills up now. So in total, you've got 5 sprues, 1 in clear, 4 in blue and grey. I'm just picking one at random. Let's take a look at this. And as you can see, this is up to the standard that we've come to expect from Airfix of recent years. Moulded detail is recessed and raised as appropriate as we go through here. You can see here you've got recessed panel lines, and then you've got raised these are joiners which hold the tail surface, the rudder onto the actual fuselage. We've got moulded detail here inside the sort of cockpit floor. Ribbed details on the rudder, at least I believe that's the rudder. The bombs are fairly well detailed as well, with the rings around the nose. And inside here we've got representation of cockpit detail and landing gear bay detail as well. There seems to be some sort of oxygen or gas cylinder there, potentially for raising and lowering the landing gear or operating some sort of parts or components inside the landing gear as the aircraft takes off. We've got some moulded detail on there on the gear bay covers as well. Let's take a look at this one. This is the lower wing surface, and you can see those little recesses, and they've also moulded on R and B, so you can decide which you put on, whether it's rockets or bombs. Speaking of rockets, they are on this sprue and they look to be really well moulded. I remember having the Typhoon from Airfix from years ago, the old one, and it never looked this good. This is leagues ahead. Even on the chair here we've got some sort of moulded detail, impression of a cushion or padding. Flip over and you can see all the nice detail of the panel lines on there. Moving on to the next sprue, we've got the top wing surfaces, and again the level of detail is consistent throughout. The one thing I have noticed is a lack of flash. There might be a tiny little bit in the odd place, but ultimately there's not much there. And then finally the last sprue, another fuselage half, some landing gear legs as well. They seem to be quite fine, so I'd be careful with those when applying them to the model or cutting them out, because they look to me like they could be quite brittle. These are the doors for the weapons bays, and they've got all this detail on the inside as well. And these are the weapons bays here. And you can see they've even made an attempt at moulding the individual cannon rounds. And there doesn't seem to be any flash in there. I mean, it would be pretty difficult to get the flash out of there if there was, but they've done a really good job there. The last thing I'm going to look at is the pilots. You know, I've got a bit of a bugbear with pilots. They either look really good or they look really bad. let's take a look at this one. Given the rest of the kit, looking at this pilot, I don't think it's quite up to the same standard as the rest of the moulded details. Yeah, okay, it's a fair representation, it's not bad, but some of the details do seem a bit shallow. They're not as pronounced as they are in some of the other kits. For example, the Bolt and Paul Defiant Gunner and Crew, they're incredibly well moulded, but this one doesn't seem to be fantastic. But that being said, it's not the worst one I've ever had. I mean, just for the sake of comparison, we compare him to these two, which came out of the Revell Stearman Cadet kit, and you can just see the difference straight away. I mean, more or less size-wise, they are pretty similar, but this guy is considerably further ahead in quality than this one. But he's not the best I've seen. But he's not the worst either. He's pretty good. I probably will end up using him in some way or another. Those are the bits. Those are the bits of the kit. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 grey plastic sprues, which are really well detailed, save for perhaps the pilot's not quite up to the same standard. A cockpit canopy, which is crystal clear, but the lines are a little bit shallow, and maybe you'll have to take a bit of care when you come to paint that. The trick now is getting it all back inside the box and the bags without breaking it. It always amazes me how they manage to put all of these things in their boxes and bags. Sometimes you get really big kits in really small boxes, and other times you get really small kits in really big boxes. So it just amazes me sometimes. We've got a good set of decals, fairly clear instructions, and then don't forget that the painting instructions are on the back of the box. And yes, I was right about the decals for the leading edges of the wing, so it's up to you whether you use them or paint that. So let's get that in there. Unfortunately, this has been glued. That's the way that this box is assembled. Not like the other boxes where they slot on top of each other, it's been glued. So if you wanted to keep it safe without the bits falling out, you're going to have to tape that back up. And that is that. I'm not going to get these out at the moment because I think that you've all seen what paint looks like before, and the included paintbrushes are a 4 and a 2 as is standard with the Airfix kits. And like I said, to be honest, these paints are not going to be up to the same standard as the more recent paints that Airfix has been using. So what do I think of this kit? Well, this kit actually came out in 2013 when this new tool was created. So this is sort of the first edition, if you like. There was another version which didn't come with paints and glues, but did come with a different painting and decal scheme. The tooling that was made in 2013 did replace the older legacy Airfix Typhoon that had been part of the range for many years. And like I said, I remember building that one, but this one is leagues ahead, and you can see why they replaced it, because the amount of detail you've got in this one, particularly with the rockets and bombs and even the weapons bay being able to be open, is just insane. I'm not entirely sure that you'd be able to get this specific kit now. You might get it as a excess stock or something that was left over, maybe hadn't been sold yet. You can see that I paid $13.99 for it. Well, actually I didn't. It came part of a mystery bag which I got a couple of years ago, but $13.99 is a reasonable price in my opinion, given the amount of detail in there. The fact that you get 6 paints, some glue and some brushes as well, it's not a bad price, but I would be looking at getting this cheaper because obviously you know I like getting a deal. A more recent version of this kit in different decal scheme was released in 2019 though. And that kit was retailing at the time for £10, but it did not come with the paints and the glues that the starter set does. Perhaps in a year or two, Airfix will release this as a starter set. Ultimately though, I think this will be a pretty fun build. It is suited perhaps to someone who is a bit more of an intermediate beginner, someone who's maybe built 1 or 2 kits before. The painting shouldn't be too difficult, especially seeing as you get the colours provided for you. The decaling shouldn't be too difficult either. Perhaps this one here would be a little bit difficult, but you shouldn't struggle too much. I think the main part might come in the actual assembly because some of the parts are very fine, so just be careful when you come to build it. Generally though, I think this is a fantastic kit, and I think that it will look absolutely fantastic as part of a diorama where it's being rearmed with those weapon bays open. So make sure you put a comment down below, let me know what you think of this kit, and if you'd like to see me build it, I'll probably put a poll up in the corner here somewhere so that you can vote on it. And the last thing I need to do before I leave is say a massive thank you to my patrons. Without these guys pledging their support, I would not be able to continue producing content for you. So a massive thank you to you. If you'd like to find out more about what pledging your support means and the perks that it gets you, take a look at the link in the description. All that's left to say is a massive thank you to you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the workbench again next time.